Okay. I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask everybody to stand. Boy Scouts, would you come out and lead us, please? Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to introduce Charles Kelly, the Assistant Scoutmaster. I'd like to say a few words.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having us, giving us a warm welcome. We are Boy Scouts from Troop 539 in Vergennes. We meet at the Armory every Sunday night from 6:30 to 8, and we're very well supported by the American Legion. So the boys that are here are first-year scouts, Boy Scouts, but they're experienced Cub Scouts, so they bring a lot of scouting knowledge with them. They are working on a very important merit badge called the Citizenship in the Nation merit badge. Community. It is one of the badges that's required for Eagle Scout. You cannot get the Eagle without having citizenship in the community. Later on, they'll do citizenship in the nation and citizenship in the world. But this is very important. They need to know about local government. They're here tonight to listen to issues and to make a note of picking one issue and very possibly call one of you folks later, next week or something, and do a brief interview about the issue that they've picked. That's one of the requirements. Another requirement not related to this meeting is they have to provide 8 hours of community service to a nonprofit organization of their choosing. So they'll be doing that later so this is requirement 3. There's, I think, 7 requirements for the badge. That's why we're here tonight.
Oh, welcome.
Also introduce Rob Jewett, another Assistant Scoutmaster, and Dennis Amel, also here to support us.
Thank you. Welcome to all. Okay, we'll move on to the next individual who would like to speak about the old cemetery. Susan Ferlin.
Yep.
Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you for getting us on the agenda. I just want to say that the Congregational Church is listed there, and I'm not a part of the Congregational Church. I just want to make that clear. I don't know if you had a chance to read your little paragraph that I submitted. The Congregational Church has the charge of the maintenance of what's known as the Old Cemetery, the School Street Cemetery, the First Cemetery, and the Old Burial Ground. I don't think they ever gave the cemetery a definitive name if you go through the records. So I'm here as a part of work that was started through the Daughters of the American Revolution. We went in every year, did some cleanup, planted some flowers, put some flags out, and became more interested in who was buried in the cemetery and who had charge of the cemetery. And in 3 years, I now have the answer as to why the Congregational Church is in charge of the cemetery. It took that long. One thing I do want to give you is research that I've done so that you can add into the inventory. There are discrepancies between what's recorded in the town clerk's office as to who's buried in the cemetery and what's in the inventory done by Henry Harmon Noble. There are some other people in there that he never caught, and then the town clerk has individuals buried in there that there's no stone for. So they're in there, I guess, somewhere. We don't know where. There's also a list of the veterans, and I've started a plot map of the graves, where they're located, and whose it might be. The stones, some of the stones are really hard to read, so I don't know if we'll ever know. There was a plot map, it's missing. I've talked to lots of people in the town who said, yeah, I remember seeing it, but no one knows where it went. So if we ever find it, it would be wonderful.
Well, we actually have one in the front of the book.
That's,
City Cemetery.
that's for Prospect. It's not for this one. If you start matching up the numbers and going through the book, it's not for this cemetery. Because I got all excited when I found the book. I was like,
In the big book down
yeah.
on the bottom?
Yeah,
Oh,
I was
I
like,
always
oh,
thought
my
that
search
was
is
the
over, and then I started matching up the numbers. I was like,
No.
no, it's not. It's Prospect. So one thing I do want to show you is Arabella. She's one of the big reasons we're here. She set up the trust. And Arabella is the great-granddaughter of Enoch Woodbridge, who was the first mayor of Vergennes. And Enoch also graduated from Yale and was involved in the Revolutionary War. He was at Hubbardton. He was also with Montgomery in Canada, and he was at the surrender of Vergennes. So Enoch knew a lot about this country, and also went on to be Chief Justice of the Vermont Supreme Court. So in addition to that, her grandfather was Billy Lawrence, who was also an early settler of the town. He lived where the Chittenden Bank is right now on Main Street, was Billy Lawrence's house. Arabella had no children of her own. She traveled, I believe she taught, and her affairs when she died were left in her nephew's control. So he helped finalize the trust with the Congregational Church. So in going through the information available, there's a lot of questions that I have. One question that I have is, if you go through the annual reports for the town of Vergennes, for 2 years, 1895 and 1896, they actually label, or they report, Old Cemetery account, and they say for 1895, $7,707.05. And then they break out how much they paid for labor that year. And then for 1896, which is only a year later, they report that the account had $9,851.63. At no time before or no time after do they ever list a line item like that. They always list it just that there was work done in the cemetery and it was paid out of the incidental account. So I don't know how you trace that money, but one of my questions is, where did that money go, and did it end up with the trust that Arabella had? Because that's a chunk of money in 1896 to have $9,000 in an account, and then it drops off. So that's one question I have. The other question I have is about Arabella's wishes, and I just have to take one thing out of this notebook that I need to. That's okay. There are several letters written by Wayland Bristol, who at the time that Arabella's trust came into being was a treasurer for the Congregational Church. So he saw that money first. And there are letters going back and forth to several companies about a memorial gate. And this is one picture that's left. And I don't know if it's the final picture, if it's just the beginning picture. So there was an intent to have this built, and then it never happened. Again, I don't know where the rest of the documentation is. A lot of this came from Jerry Vesper, who was a member of the Congregational Church, and at one point, he had a lot of interest in it. He and I talked several times. He was drafted, or he went overseas again, and he gave it to me. So I'm gonna pass this along to you, see what we can do. So in this process, I've talked a lot with the Congregational Church. I've done presentations to the Congregational Church. They just don't have any interest in continuing, basically. It's not part of their mission. They have a small committee who basically oversees the trust, makes sure that the lawn gets mowed, and that's it. At the last presentation I went to, I presented a needs assessment of areas that need to be addressed in the cemetery. And I, at that time, had not heard anything about how much money was in the fund. I was thinking, well, maybe they have $500. I didn't know about the trust at that time. When they told me they had $28,000 in the trust, and they were telling me they had no money to do anything, I think my jaw must have dropped to the floor. I don't know if they noticed it, but I was like, oh my gosh. And then after looking at, this intent to build a memorial, it's like, what happened here? She definitely had some plans for the cemetery. Why didn't it get carried through? Why is the gate in such terrible shape? I mean, if at some point they had to have put that metal gate in. I don't know when. I can't find a record of that says 1955 they put it in, and they only put it in along one street. I guess Bill Hopkins, out of the goodness of his heart, continued around some of it that wasn't done. And there's even a stretch on the eastern side of the cemetery that has barbed wire, which really needs to come down, and I don't know who put that up. But it seems to me that with the war, the anniversary of the War of 1812 coming up, we have many veterans in that cemetery who are part of that engagement, including General Sam Strong, who was a big part of that engagement, that it's time to take some of that money and make some improvements. If I were in charge, if I could wave the magic wand and spend the money, I'd rip up the fence. I'd put a nice fence at least along the front side. Along the back and the edge, I don't think you need as beautiful a fence. You need something utilitarian that's going to last. And that's one thing of interest when you go through the annual reports. That's a lot of what they're spending their money on, is to fix the fence. Originally, I guess it was a cedar fence. And there's a note that Asa Strong was paid one year. They voted money to pay him to fix the fence yet again. So it's a recurring theme. It's nothing new for the cemetery. The other thing is the sign that I believe Job Corps put up for the cemetery. I think they did it. There's a spelling mistake in the sign, and then the name of the cemetery. In the town records, it's never referred to as the first cemetery. It's either the old cemetery or it's the burial ground of Vergennes. So I think that's something that needs attention. It deserves a nice sign that's accurate. There's also stones that need to be taken care of. Again, one of the important ones for War of 1812 is, and I'm probably saying his name wrong, is Jezahel Sherman's. He had the shipyard here in Vergennes. He did steamboats out on the lake, and it pretty much sounds like McDonough took over his shipyard to get his ships up and running and out onto the lake for the conflict. He has a beautiful monument which is on the ground. There's an urn that goes on top, and then on top of the urn is this flame. It's all intact, but the base needs to be leveled and I guess supported more before the weight can go back on top of it. And it's so heavy, you can't just lift it. You'd have to have a walking tackle in there. And I don't even know if you could get a tractor in there, because that part of the cemetery, everything is very close together. And I think you're looking at your clock. Oh, sorry. The one last thing, the good thing I found out about is there is a new cleaner. It's called D as in David /2 biological. And it is a cleaner that does not harm the stone. It's not toxic. And basically it takes away all of the moss, the lichen, and all of the stuff that's on the stone now. It's expensive. It's, from what I've heard, it's $250 for a 5-gallon bucket. I don't know how many applications you'd need. I've emailed the person who sent me the information so we can try to get that. I was thinking one of the stones that really needs it is the one at the top of Comfort Hill, McIntosh's. My son and I went up there this summer to clean it. The Vermont Old Cemetery Association says just use water and a toothbrush or a soft brush. Don't use anything stronger than that on these old stones. So we did, and it made it better, but it's stained, and I think this cleaner would take that stain right off. So that's another piece that could be addressed. So I don't know if you have questions. I mean, I can go on and on and on about the cemetery and the history, who's in there.
So Sue, just to be clear, you know, you're not here on behalf of the Vergennes Congregational
No,
Church.
I'm not a member of the church.
And I can tell you that, you know, for years there's always been some confusion about who owns the cemetery, and I remember a zoning application involving the second phase of the elderly housing project, and there was some desire to have a pedestrian easement, you know, from because for years, you know, before the senior housing projects were developed, there was a beaten path, you know, from Mountain View Lane towards the high school, and when those senior housing projects went in there, there was felt that there needed to be some provision, some permanent provision to allow kids to go through that area. And then there was a question of, well, you know, if they're going to use any portion of the cemetery, there should be some permanent easement. And I think because everyone felt that you know, because the First Congregational Church of Vergennes maintained it all the years, therefore they must own it. And and so there was an easement granted, you know, that was signed over by the trustees or whatever of the church. Now, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm sure that, you know, no one was, you know, trying to pull the wool over anybody. I mean, nobody knew. I mean, really, you know, as you know, the record shows that the Congregational Church has been maintaining that cemetery for
Since the 30s.
Yeah, so
pretty much.
for decades and decades, the city has had no connection to it whatsoever. It's not on our asset list. It's not on our public works department. It's not part of our budget. It has just
Right.
been that way. Now, you know, relative to the money of, you know, 1895, this kind of like, where'd the money go? You know, everybody in this room is innocent because we weren't here in 1895. But you know, one of the things, you know, Joan and I both know how annual reports are done, and they were done a little differently back then.
Right.
You know, we're not talking about, you know, CPAs and, you know, federal single audit regulations and all this type of thing. It was the locally elected board of auditors that did the annual report, and the clerk was involved. That was their job. And I think that when you look at annual reports, you will see some inconsistency from year to year, and I'll bet that inconsistency is very much driven by who was clerk and who was auditor. So the fact that, for something, some fund not to be reported, it is a little strange, but I can understand how it can happen. And if it was held in a separate account, you think about, people who've donated money to schools for scholarships and whatever. I mean, lots of schools have all kinds of scholarship funds, and they're kind of kept in a separate CD, and they really should be reported in an annual report, but they aren't. So it is a little strange. That's you could buy 4 houses in 1890. You could probably buy 24 houses in 1895 with $7,000. So that part is a little strange.
After going through from the beginning all the way, I think I went all the way up to the 30s, just to have those 2 years specifically state that line item, it's like, okay, was there really an account? My intuition would say yes, because I believe people like Sam Strong, the Strong family, left money to take care of the cemetery. So I think there was some seed money, but as you said, how they chose to report that, who knows?
Right.
And
it is a little strange. I mean, if in fact your findings are such that the city of Vergennes owns the cemetery, let's just go on that assumption that the city of Vergennes owns the cemetery, and then there was a trust created that took over the responsibility of the care, and if there, typically when there is some trust that's created, then either there's some acquiescence by the city council, or that's fine, and that responsibilities can transfer, and you haven't run across.
No, there is that. Oh, it's all documented.
So it's it's
the
very
city-
clear that the city council allowed, in essence,
They were overjoyed.
blessed, if you will, that
basically.
that transfer. So that occurred. That's
Yeah.
what occurred.
That
and
did
so it's been not the responsibility of the city, once that action was taken. All right. So I guess where I'm at is I really thought that you were here as a part of the Vergennes Congregational Church, and thanks for clarifying that. I guess what I'm unclear about is what is being requested.
Right. I've talked to the Congregational Church too, and I shared with them the trust, which they had no knowledge of. I spoke with Gary Lewis and Vergennes, I can't remember his first name. So they're aware of the situation, and it also stipulates in the trust that yes, the trust can be broken, but it needs to be done legally. It can't just be, well, we don't feel like doing it this year. Let's not. So basically, what needs to happen is the Congregational Church needs to relinquish the trust. And once they relinquish the trust, once they say, we're done, this is not our mission, this is not what we want to do anymore, then the question becomes, well, who's responsible? Who owns the cemetery, or is there ownership of the cemetery? The only document that I can find is the original quitclaim from Reed Ferris, who quitclaimed the land to the city for a burial ground. After that, there's no record that I can find where that deed transferred to somebody else. It appears to be still held by the city. So if the Congregational Church makes this formal and says, yes, we're done, we're signing it over, then it either becomes the job of the city to take it back, or, another piece would be, are there people interested who'd want to set up a cemetery association, which then breaks it away from the city again. They're their own entity. Just Prospect has its own cemetery association. The Catholic Church has their own cemetery.
Let me just tell you, I haven't done a ton of research. I'm not a lawyer, but I always, as Joan will tell you, I always turn to the green books. When these kinds of things come up, I just go to the law. And so I did spend a little time about reading the law about how how cemeteries work, you know, and there's various forms of governance, if you will, about cemeteries. And this is really strange, you know, the fact that the city owns something and in essence really turned over maintenance and care, you know, to this trust or to a trustee, all right? You know, it's worked fine to me.
Well, it's fine when the party that has that mission is truly invested and sees that as something they want to do.
Yeah.
It's not something they want to do.
Right.
And when you have folks who really set up the town of Vergennes, I mean, we wouldn't be here today without them. I think we owe them a decent burial ground. No, I don't think it has to be like a national cemetery or anything like that, but I do think there are things we could do to make it a more pleasant place. I mean, it's not even open.
Yeah, well, whether or not it was handled properly by the city council in 1930, okay? Whatever happened, and it clearly landed in the church's court.
Right.
You know, and so to me, you know, I think that the next step is, I think that the ball is in the court of the church, and the church, because I don't, like right now, yes, we own it, but it's very clear that that maintenance and care transferred. It transferred. And if there is a, you know, either a request by the church or forfeiture, you know, is the only other word I can come up with, they need to come forward, because some very gray ownership responsibility thing just doesn't work. I mean, it needs to be very clear as to, you know, who has authority, who makes decisions, who budgets, what gets done, what's the design. And because only care and maintenance transferred, it really put it in a real gray area, in my opinion. And so one of the things that needs to be done, if anything's going to be done, is to have it be crystal clear as to, you know, who owns it, who makes the decisions, and whatever form of governance. Because like I say, statutorily there are, you know, different ways to manage a cemetery.
Right, and there are also laws regarding that all cemeteries are supposed to be fenced, maintained. There's also another issue too with the landowner, which Mel and I have talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The western side of the cemetery. There's a barn, there's no gutter along the roof, and all that water is just pouring right down on two stones. One is a stone that's like a table. It's flat, and then it's got 4 posts underneath it, which is an unusual style, but if you travel outside of Vermont, it really isn't. I guess it was innovative for its time. That stone happens to be the grandson of Enoch Woodbridge and Samuel Strong. So again, 2 of your leading town players, their grandson's stone is being damaged. We wrote a letter to the landowner, to the management company, which I did pass on to Mel, and the Congregational Church also got copies, and then he wrote back basically saying that until that property made money, there wasn't going to be anything done, and suggested that we make little plywood like tents to put around to protect our stones, which in my opinion is totally unacceptable. Not to mention that same management company, the year they painted that building, spattered paint all over another stone, and was just kind of like, oh well. And that's property damage. That's, I mean, the owner of the cemetery would be would be allowed, if they knew the name of the insurance company, to file a claim and say, we've got damage here. It's clear. that barn is also falling into the cemetery. And I would wonder, was that barn ever built legally? That would be my next question. But I haven't had time
Well,
to research. It
it's
took
not like
3
the-
years to get this far.
It's not like the city has had zoning,
No,
since it was
but
chartered in
considering
1788,
how
so.
close, I mean, the barn to one stone, there's
Yeah.
maybe a foot.
Well, you need to understand, Susan, that, like I say, the city of Vergennes did not have zoning going back to 1788, so people were
agree.
free to, they didn't go get a zoning permit.
No.
They built on their property, and if they built on somebody else's property, I mean, they didn't call the zoning administrator. There was no zoning administrator.
But it's still curious.
Right.
The other thing is where is the property boundary really at?
Well, that's another interesting question, because in the original deed, I mean, they do talk about rods and, what's left of that, and I'm not an engineer. It would take someone, I think, who was an engineer to decipher and to figure out where the old landmarks are. I mean, there has been a house on that property for quite a while. When it was first built, I don't know. It could have been right around the time of the first cemetery. It might have been after, I don't know. But that barn has not always been there in exactly that configuration. And if you look closely, part of the retaining wall actually appears to have stands from old stones. Looks like someone just decided, well, we need a little piece over here, let's move it over. Well, that's interesting.
Mel, next step, or Peter, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, it sounds like the next step is clearly with the church.
Right.
To make a formal request, and then Mel will go into his research mode and figure out where to go from there.
Right. Now, will this get printed up in minutes so that
Yeah.
they can
Yes.
see that formally as well? Because it's not their mission, they're really not moving on it, they're kind of sitting there and nobody knows what to do.
Sue, did the Congregational Church know that you were coming in here tonight?
Yes,
So they were aware of it?
as far as I know, they're aware of it, yes. And they have all the information that I've shared with you. There's nothing new here tonight that they don't know. So that's fine, and I hope that,
Yeah, I don't think the council
Come back
can
again.
do anything but wait until there, as Peter suggested, until there's a proposal in front of them.
right. But the only piece I would say is, there is from my opinion, there is a clear ownership, that did not transfer. And it's clear in the trust, that it was just me and Pierre that transferred, not ownership. And I did give copies of that to Mel as well. So that's all there. Good. We're closer than we were 3 years ago.
Well, definitely, if something's gonna be able to be done, there's gonna have to be some financial support to make it happen. And it sounds like there is something there.
There is. And that becomes another part of the problem. There are programs, there are grants you can write for. But when you start looking at the cemeteries in Vermont, there are cemeteries that have absolutely no money. If I wrote a grant, or tried to write a grant through VOCA, Vermont Old Cemetery Association, they basically laugh at me and say, you have $28,000 in a trust, you need money from us? We're dealing with people who have absolutely nothing. There are also work crews. Tom Giffen, who is the president of the Vermont Old Cemetery Association, is a correctional officer. And work crews have been trained from prisoners, basically, who come in and they know how to clean, they know how to straighten stones, and they come in for free. So there are resources available, but again,
You gotta have somebody.
with the wealth you
Right.
have,
Yeah.
or the wealth the cemetery has, nobody's going to do anything until you either start paying some money out and show that, yeah, we're interested in taking care of this place.
Okay, I guess what we'll do is wait to hear from the church to see what their intents are.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Next on the agenda, our visitors are President Bill Landing of the Stevens Hose Company, and then we'd like to talk about restoration of the 1927 boilers. Bill and committee or members, the floor is yours.
I guess I'm the speaker, so, I'm Bill Lanning, I'm a member of the Vergennes Fire Department, also president of Stevens Hose Company. For those of you who are not familiar with Stevens Hose Company, the City of Vergennes Fire Department started out in 1876 as the Stevens Hose Company. You'll see some memorabilia in the cabinet over there, and some of our old hose carts from the original Stevens Hose Company. In 2002, the Vergennes Fire Department started a nonprofit arm called Stevens Hose Company, and we incorporated as a nonprofit. What Stevens Hose Company does is we take donations, and when Ray Davison passed away, he gave Stevens Hose Company a donation to be used for training and unique fire equipment, etc. And so we have some funds in that account. So Stevens Hose Company is part of the Vergennes Fire Department. All members are part of it, but it's a separate agency as a nonprofit arm of the fire department. Upstairs on the apparatus floor, you can see this engine here, which is a 1926 Boyer fire truck made in Indiana. It's on a Dodge chassis. It was purchased by the City of Vergennes in 1926. It stayed active in the fire department for almost 40 years. Those of you that are lifelong residents, where the classic stitching is the Hungry Bear, etc. At 1958, there was a large fire there, and this truck spent about 8 hours parked on the corner of the green there, connected to a fire hydrant, putting that fire out. So it's got a lot of history in the town of Vergennes. It's in ill repair. It hasn't been touched in 40 years. It's sitting up on our apparatus floor if you'd like to see it. The Stevens Hose Company would like to gain possession of that truck from the City of Vergennes. So we'd like to transfer title and ownership from the city to Stevens Hose Company as a nonprofit organization. And our members would like to then put the time and effort in to restore the truck to a parade apparatus, showpiece, memorabilia of early firefighting. So we're approaching the City Council to ask for you to sell us the truck, or transfer the ownership to the Stevens Hose Company.
Any questions? Randy?
No, I was gonna make a motion.
Okay, go ahead and make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we transfer the 26 Boyer to the Stevens Hose Company.
Second.
Second, open it up for discussion. The only concern that I would have is to make sure there was some stipulation that it could not be resold. If it was gonna be resold, it'd have to be turned back over to the city.
Well,
I think that's reasonable.
that's reasonable. We'd also like to request that the city still provide a place for us to park it.
Not a problem.
That was my question, where do you want to put it?
We'd like to keep it in the fire station because it is part of the firefighting history. So we'd like the city to provide a space rent-free to store the vehicles.
Yeah, and with the transfer of ownership, in Bill's letter made reference that they, as owners, they would be responsible for insuring the vehicle and registration as owners.
Right, correct.
You want to add all that stuff to the motion?
Yes.
Well, it's a discussion anyways, yeah, but attitude.
Okay.
Well, I've got it.
She's
here.
already
I
got it
can
down.
just
Just
interject.
read back what you got,
To
Joan.
transfer the 1926 Boyer to the Stevens Hose Company with the understanding it'll be stored at the Vergennes Fire Station at no charge and will be given back to the city when done with, or when no longer won, or you say they have to give it back to us rather than sell it.
City gets first right on the truck or whatever.
Why would we want them to give that back to us?
Good question, Zig.
I mean, they could turn around and sell it for a lot of money, and.
It's our history.
And that's part of our history. Not saying,
I understand what
it's.
you're
So we should have first
You're looking at
option.
some guys that have been around for a while, but us guys are getting to the age we're
I
not gonna
know.
be around for much longer. So we get some of those new guys, they may not feel that same
The only
way.
things I want to point out is that we're not breaking new ground here. We're following our brethrens in Bristol. Our brethrens in Bristol have the same thing. They have NH Munsell Hose Company, and they have 1936 LaFrance fire truck, which they just did the same thing 2 years ago with the city of Bristol. They transferred ownership to NH Munsell, they restored the truck, and they maintain it, own insurance on it, and operate the vehicle for parades and everything as a separate entity.
Well, I understand that, and that's why you guys are doing all the work.
No, but I'm just saying is, so now American LaFrance,
Yeah,
representative American LaFrance still makes fire trucks, saw that truck restored, and they said, well, it's a beautiful
Oh, I see.
vehicle. We'd like to pay you $100,000 for that truck. So they said, no, it's our truck, it's our memorabilia, we're keeping it. But now the city said, hey, we need $100,000, we can come take the truck. We're saying that's why we want the ownership of the truck, to maintain it as an antique firefighting apparatus for the city of Vergennes. And then our intent is not to sell it, our intent is to maintain it as an antique piece of history, just like we kept the hose carts and other things from the 1800s.
Right. Well, I think what the mayor is suggesting is that there be another condition, you know, that the truck cannot be transferred without the permission of the city council.
Is that,
That's their chief,
Yep.
I think.
I mean, it's just full loops.
I mean, the whole intent here is so that it never leaves the city. So, you know, and, you know, the fact of the matter is, it's gonna stay here. It doesn't, we don't want it to go anywhere, nobody does, just like the old cowling that's upstairs. We'd have it hanging from the ceiling if the ceiling could hold it, but it won't. So, you know, we have it down, because if we had it hanging from the ceiling, ain't nobody gonna get rid of it, because they're not gonna take it down.
can't we just say in that it just can't be sold?
That's why I just changed the wording, that it'll be stored at the fire station at no charge, and that it cannot, its
Cannot be
ownership
sold.
cannot be transferred without city council consent.
Correct.
Because you guys are gonna do all the renovations, and I'd like to see you to keep it, you know.
Correct. Correct.
Accepted the way she's got it printed?
Yes.
Accepted the way she's got it printed?
Yeah, there's just one thing, I mean, I'm hearing the concern about it being sold and leaving the city of Vergennes, and to further complicate matters, I understand what you're saying regarding the fire department and newer members. That could also be true relative to the city council.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Right.
there might be another mechanism or another way to word it if we're really intent on seeing that remain in Vergennes. It could probably be locked down even further.
What do you recommend?
I'm
If there's
not,
no consent, that it can only be transferred to the city of Vergennes.
yeah. Period, the end. That way, it you know, another city council, I mean, they could probably, I'm not sure how it would have to be worded to ensure that it remain in the city, you know, something to the effect of that we ensure that it remains in the city of Vergennes, because essentially, if we're talking about Stevens Hose Company being limited in their ability to effect transfer of that apparatus outside of Vergennes, in the event 20 years down the road, different folks, Stevens Hose Company, different city council, Stevens Hose Company says, hey, we're going to transfer it back to the city of Vergennes. And there's a sitting council at that time that then decides to sell it. So there's an
Which-
interesting conundrum.
Which came first, chicken or egg?
Right.
I think the wording we have is fine.
You can only
That
protect
the
it.
ownership cannot be transferred without council consent.
Right.
Are you okay with that, David?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of what it is that we're actually doing.
I think we're doing it as tight as we can, I mean, without making it totally, what they say, idiot-proof.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
In
Relative to
40
the sale
years-
of assets, David, as you know, the only type of asset that requires voter approval under our charter is real estate in sewer capacity.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought that too, so.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
I'd like to thank the city council on behalf of Stevens House.
We're going to take and move 8B up to next in line, because we have a gentleman here, and we don't want to hold him here all night.
Gotta go to work tomorrow.
Yes. Like to hear a motion on a request for vendor permit for trash drop-off.
I make
Randy?
that motion.
Oh,
Let's see again.
all right, Ziggy's got the motion. Lowell second. Open for discussion.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Is he here?
He's here, he's right back.
Okay. Hi. In fact, it was last week. I was in line to do the recycling, and there was 4 or 5 cars ahead of me, and all of them wanted to wait, you know, to get rid of their rubbish. But the point is, nobody could move. But you did have somebody come down and try to tell them to, you know, you were trying to, either motion them to go up further or something, but there has been a problem going on down there. And I know you're trying to take care of it, maybe, but is there anything that you can tell the people that maybe they can park up higher above you until, and then get the garbage? Because I sat there for about a good 8 minutes and I couldn't get by anybody because they're all waiting to try, and then there's people coming down and they were cutting in line. Unless we can find another way of rooting you out of there.
They really try to get people to pull up.
Yeah, I know you were, because you had your guys out there trying to make it, but they weren't
people
moving.
pull around, other cars are trying to pull out, it creates a hassle.
Yeah,
The one thing I can't do is I can't tell the people when to come and do the recycling.
no, I know that.
And it's really hard to, and sometimes I've seen it backed up in the recycling center up on Main Street. And that's not my fault, but then I'll let people move to me. And you know, it's more just the way that they flow in and out. I really try to control that as best I can. I've got 5 people on Saturdays.
Yeah, I know you do have a lot there. This one person tried to get, I don't know if he was in a hurry, but he was trying to get by everybody because he decided he wasn't gonna dump his recycled. And then even, finally, one gentleman yelled at him, told him he could back up because they only had that one truck that day. So he came, so then he turned around and tried to come back out the way that we were coming in. So I don't know, you know, if there's any way that,
Well, one of the things, is, like, first off, you know, relative to Jeff with the backup, one of the things that we've learned is that, you know, when Christmas occurs, almost regardless of what day Christmas falls on, you know, it's a disaster down there. And it's just that, you know, everybody is just trying to get there, squeeze themselves into either the 4 hours on Wednesdays or the 4 hours on Saturdays. So one of the things that I want to do this year is have special hours, you know, post-Christmas, you know, to try to spread that demand out. So that's one issue. The other thing is in our municipal development plan, there is a policy that states that or recognizes that there should be a recycling task force, if you will, some group to really take a look at the operation down there. And there's some days, Jeff, as you know, it runs absolutely fine. On a Wednesdays, the lines aren't backed up, and many Saturdays it operates fine. But if it's the weekend following too nice of a weekend, because nobody went there on Saturday with their trash, and next thing you know, you have the excessive unanticipated number of users there on a Saturday. I mean, it backs up.
that's why I was asking him if he had any suggestions, because he's there all the time. If something could be done a little different, that would be easier, because you're there all the time.
I have some ideas, and I will talk to you after deer hunting. Okay? And I'll talk to Mel too.
Yeah. So one of the things, Zig, I think that the at least in our plan, it recognized let's step back and take a look. I mean, we've been this recycling center, whether or not it's a recycling center inside of a building. I can remember when we started, it was done with Gaylords, and everybody had to separate their bottles and cans, and now it's a totally different operation, the way that it's conducted. And to me, it's long overdue for a review. I mean, what are the problems here? Should this whole location be changed? I can tell you, fortunately, the neighbors in that area are
Very good.
very tolerant. I can tell you, I can think of some people that would never tolerate. But it is only 8 hours a week. It's not like it's happening 24 hours a day. But I think the whole setup needs to be looked at. Obviously the on occasion, if the due date for your water bill shows up, it happens to be the same Wednesday, it happens to be busy.
On the water on Wednesday?
What's that?
Where they vote on the
Oh,
water?
yeah.
No, well, that was a whole nother problem, but
Yeah.
I think just as a general rule, if it just happens that, as the water district, their due dates for collection, they collect water charges quarterly, right? And so they're going to be busier, and so if that due date lines up with a Wednesday, it becomes problematic, and they've tolerated the congestion down there as well. Well, it's like I say, I just think that this is a situation where we should get a committee formed. People like Jeff would be very valuable to get on there, take a look at this operation and see if there isn't a different location that would better be able to handle the situation. It's been going, we like I say, I think that we opened that center in 1987 or something like that, all right? And it's been okay, but it has its shortcomings.
Well, I have some definite ideas. I'll share them with you, both of you, see if that would work.
And you're planning on some special hours?
In the Christmas season, yeah. I think it has to be. It may have to be open every day of the week. After Christmas, you can't. We had a disaster.
I think
down
though,
there.
if you say it's going to be open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, everybody's going to jump on Monday, thinking that I'll get rid of it, and get it gone, and then Tuesday and Wednesday you'll have like next nothing. So
Yeah.
unless you break it up, A through F goes on Monday, and
Right. Right.
I think that's the only way you could do it.
Yeah.
And then people aren't going to listen.
You can't train them.
No. God bless them. We're one of them.
I really try to make it all smooth down here, pull the people up so that, try to keep the people in the car. They get out of the car, it slows everything down, the next person, And the one thing, like I said, can't control when they come. If there's a big line, everybody pulls into 2 trucks in front of me, and then they're all trying to turn right. Yeah, I can understand.
So maybe the location, sum it up and get it.
That will be talked about. Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Same to you. Okay, we're gonna jump back to warrants. Everybody's seen the warrants?
Yeah, I got a bunch of questions.
Go for it.
I've been good last
Okay.
meetings. There's some things I'm not, $2,200 for plant maintenance, is that like just plants around the city, or is it something else?
A sewer plant. It's actually
Plant maintenance?
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that, Peter, let me just tell you that, when the way that bills, come in,
Okay.
Leslie is required to enter a description. Right?
Okay, all right.
And I actually, it's not like I write the description. She's gonna use her best judgment. So anyway, there was
That's
actually
not
a
a problem.
problem we have with a filter in our sewer plant.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
It's, the credit card, obviously, you use it for ongoing sorts of expenses during
Yeah,
the year.
there's-
And this, $500, but it's, part of my question would be is, excuse me, how many, lunches down at the Antidote?
None for me.
Okay, all right.
Well, first off, let me
That's
just tell you, the credit card situation is, I have a credit card.
Yeah.
I think
I do.
Joan has a credit card.
Jimmy
Chief
Laro.
Burkle has a credit card. Jim Larrell has a credit card.
And Marty.
and Marty has a
Yep,
credit
every
card.
department.
Okay.
So everybody has their own credit card, so when the credit card bill comes in, it's very much itemized, all right?
Okay.
Now, obviously,
Is that fuel too?
I'm sorry?
Is that fuel too for the, like the fire trucks or anything?
No, that's shampoo, that's a different card.
Different card.
Actually, let me ask just
sure,
a
sure.
simpler question, just,
Yeah.
obviously when this comes in, you review it,
Yep.
or you guys
They're
review
all-
it?
Yeah, they're all
in that
reviewed,
way?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that's
Yeah.
all I need to know.
Yeah, they do get used, obviously, if Leslie needs to order office supplies for 3 different departments, and she's gonna grab my card,
Yep,
so.
okay.
To be very honest with you, Peter, I don't like a lot of use of credit cards, all right? And the reason is I can't track vendors. When we pay a credit card bill,
Yeah.
if there's, 10 different vendors on there,
Yeah,
Track, like,
it's,
where
I
did
can
I
tell you,
order
it's
that
happened
from?
where, let's say we have a police grant for, IT equipment or something like
Okay.
that, and I'm trying to find, I know we bought this from Dell, and I'm searching for Dell, and it's not showing up. Now, to try to say, oh, shoot, we bought it with a credit card, it's a pain. So
All right.
the less, the better for us on credit cards.
CDL license renewal, you do CDLs for all your folks?
Yep,
You pay for that?
Yep.
That's kind of a routine
We
thing.
require them to have a CDL. Their job
But-
requires a CDL.
but not all employers do that, but we pay for it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What is DMR, the Endyne DMR sampling?
Every month, we have to pull samples from the sewer plant. It goes to a laboratory to do testing for, we have a outside lab do phosphorus,
Okay.
settable solids, whatever,
So,
TSS.
but the people down there pull the sample, the Endyne.
They pull a sample and we,
Okay, just
and
send it on
we have
up.
to send it to a
So that's
lab.
basically for lab work?
Yeah,
Okay. I had a lot of time this weekend.
yeah, it's okay. I love
Well,
these.
that's
I love
fine.
this.
Yeah,
It's great.
that's
There's a US.
You know, it's so fitting that you're sitting in Christine Collette's chair.
I was thinking that.
Okay. US Bank, admin comp contract, I just didn't understand what that meant.
The U.S. Bank is actually the lease company that is used for our computer and photocopying equipment. It's the way that we actually lease that equipment for a
Okay.
5-year
Okay.
period.
Okay,
So that's what that is.
okay. Let me see.
You gotta stump me, come on.
Well, nothing's gonna stump you, you know what this is all about. Boarding services, I presume that's for the chief's dog?
No, that would be for anybody else's dog. And a cat. Don't go there, John. Actually, don't forget, the arrangement that we have now is very different with the Vergennes Animal Hospital.
Okay,
When they pick up the dog, because of the outrage that was occurring on occasion in the lobby of Vergennes Animal Hospital, we changed the whole flow, all right?
Okay.
It's
As
working
long as
good.
that dog is registered, let them have their dog. If they want to scream, come up and scream at Joan. It's okay with me, all right?
okay,
So we pay it, Joan bills it, and if they don't pay within 30 days, it gets turned over to the police department, and
They give
somebody
them a
shows up
ticket.
on their doorstep, so.
okay.
yeah.
So having taken up everybody's time, I
That's
presume
okay.
a motion is in order to approve the warrants as submitted?
No, there's no
Sign it.
motion,
Yeah,
just
sign it.
question, just sign
Okay,
it.
all right, thank you.
One other quick thing that we can do is the minutes. I'd ask for a motion on the minutes for October 25th, 2011, City Council. Lowell made the motion, Randy seconded it. All those in favor?
Aye.
I
Opposed?
think I abstained.
Oh,
I just.
excuse me?
I abstained.
Okay, he's gonna abstain. I meant to mention any omission, corrections, or errors.
Oh, no.
Hearing none. Sorry about that. Okay, so passed. And I promised that I would have the scouts out by 8 o'clock because we understand they're gonna be working hard in school tomorrow and we don't want their heads sitting at the desk and getting us in trouble for keeping them up late. We wanna thank you for coming tonight. You have some numbers, some contact numbers. Feel free to call any of the council members. The only one that you shouldn't call is Joe, because he's not here, although you could quiz him, see if he read his agenda. So, again, thank you, and if you'd like to leave.
Thank you for buffering us so nicely. And just remember that we're the troop in the city of Vergennes, and if you ever see boys that look like they would do good in scouting, send them our way.
I was a member of Troop 539 many years ago.
Come and see us anytime. Sunday nights we meet 6:30 to 8.
That's one of my few nights off.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll give them just a second or a minute or get out to,
Oh, I don't know. You got a little calculator on you? July 1. November 1.
And then there was one.
Okay, no, I'm all set.
See you soon, thank you.
we haven't got the public comment.
July, August,
Comment
September,
yet.
October,
Okay.
November, so it's like 4.5 months out of 12.
We didn't want to borrow them, too bad. Budget review. Any questions, Mel?
Yeah,
You wanna
let
cover
me
it?
just tell you, here it is, November 15th, and I did do a complete review of the budget, and I actually feel pretty good where we're at right now, because it hasn't snowed yet, all right? So, but anyway, I'm gonna say pre-winter, the budget is, it is in pretty good shape. As you can see in Public Works, Jim didn't spend all the money on paving. We still have a little money left over. We don't necessarily have a specific plan to do something more with the roads in the spring. That'll be driven very much by the type of winter we have. I mean, if we have an easy winter, then maybe we would do a little bit of road work. But I mentioned before, some of the revenues are a little weak, and I don't see those correcting. I mentioned before about the payment in lieu of taxes. It's done. Mileage aid is set. I guess one of the things I am a little concerned with. I will tell you that I watched the news before I came over, and you hear about Irene and towns in trouble. We obviously dodged a bullet. Here in Vergennes, but I can, one of the things that concerns me a little bit is, the legislature's gonna meet pretty soon, all right? We've only got 2 checks out of the 4 of our mileage aid. We've seen it before, where the legislature convenes and they say, well, we need to make some adjustments, so, I feel bad about, the municipalities that really got hurt, but, what would make me feel even, would make me upset is that, if the legislature starts, trying to balance, their financial difficulties on the backs of municipalities. It's happened before, so, I'm a little concerned about, some potential cut in mileage aid of a year when everybody needs their mileage aid. It's this year. We just hope that there isn't any cut. So the shortcomings, they aren't huge. But there's probably about $10,000 worth that I see. I mean, zoning fees are down, clerk fees are down, mileage aid is a little short. Pilot, because of Winooski's windfall, we were short there. So, it really wouldn't surprise me at all that we're going to come, $10 or more $1,000 short in those so-called supplemental revenues. And, the only thing that we can do is to just, watch our spending. If there's some purchases that we can, defer, then we defer them. If, obviously the expenditure budget relies on the revenue page. And if the revenues aren't there, then we have to act accordingly.
One of the things that I am seeing, it's more noticeable this year than in past, is the grooves that are developing in Main Street, where the heavy traffic seems to be going, and I'm noticing sort of a ripple effect over on West Main Street now when you start going up. So I don't know.
Well, the only good news about that one, I'm glad you said West Main Street, because we have a $65,000 fund. One of the things when the city, remember when West Main Street was rebuilt, where they leveraged a Class 1 project into a rebuild, part of that agreement required the city to set some money aside, and money was set aside for a number of years. That fund, I'm pretty sure that's the right number, is $65,000. Obviously if a grind and resurface, that's the way that we would do that section there, Mike, because, there's not like excessive curb reveal there. That would be a grind and resurface.
Looks like you might get a top coat of an inch or two.
Okay.
on it. But
But anyway,
Look at
we
it.
fortunately, we have that money, and I think it's about, one of the things that we don't want to do is wait too long and have that become a $250,000 problem. You know, let's catch it, catch it at, hopefully the $65,000 point. So we'll take a look at that.
I don't know if we could spill a little bit on this side of the bridge, because as you go down under the bridge,
Yeah, I'm sure.
that's, the more it
Trucks,
gets,
yeah.
the more it gets pounded, the more it shifts. And,
Yeah.
And
So-
I don't like the work that they did on the upper portion of Moncton Road where they dug that part up. It's
It's awful.
very, very
Yep.
choppy when you first pull on
Yeah,
Moncton Road.
obviously there was a water break there. There was a new connection to, there was a new, for the John Graham shelter. I mean, that really got beat up, so, I really, nothing's gonna happen this season, but, to me, that, at least that first, 100 to 150 feet probably needs to be removed and rebuilt, because it's, you go for a ride,
Yeah.
The kids in buses must be going for a little bit of a ride. But they go around that
Wakes them
corner.
up before they get to the school.
Yes.
Yeah. Any questions,
We're
Mel?
here.
Any questions on Mel on the budget?
Mm-mm.
If none, go right down through. Anybody have any committee reports that they want to pass along?
Did you ever get a chance to talk to Chet?
I did talk to Chet, and, I really think that what's happening here is that the ball is in the courts of the property owners to form, that if the property owners, the town is not going to take the lead in this, Zig. So and the town knows that it's only, it would only occur with a special assessment district. And so it's really in the property owner's court to.
So apparently he must have researched it, because he never mentioned any of that. He was mentioning if we, that's what he said at the time. if
Yeah,
we
well,
did whatever.
when I talked to him and he dropped off the statute that he was referring to, and the statute that he was referring to was nothing that I was interested in. It was called a consolidated water district, a consolidated sewer district. A consolidated sewer district is typically used when two municipalities that don't have sewer consolidate to build the treatment plant and extend sewer, all right? I'm not interested in that. I think that, the concept of a fire district, with a formula as to how that fire district would pay the city of Vergennes, I mean, that still, has some merit, but, to be honest with you, Zig, I don't spend any time on this. I really, it's.
I'm not asking you, I just didn't know, because he said, and you've talked to him a couple
I've
of times.
talked to him, yeah.
So I said, well, next time you see him, just ask him about it.
Yeah.
That's
So
all
I think that
delivered
it's,
the message.
I think that it's clear, that, the city council is now clear that they will only extend sewer with an intermunicipal agreement. I think that, maybe intermunicipal always, may have been thought that would be town to town, but intermunicipal can be municipality to a fire district, because a fire district is a municipality. So it would still be an intermunicipal agreement. In that way, that if somebody, if they formed a fire district or a little special assessment district or a special sewer district, there would be an agreement between the city of Vergennes and the district. And if somebody didn't pay their bill, the district would be responsible for that bill. And, relative to uses, it would be the district that would have to police its usage. So to me, Vergennes has made it clear, the city council has made it clear, and I think that Ferrisburg Select Board has made it clear that the town is not interested in an intermunicipal agreement, but they have no objections to the formation of a fire district. So to me, the ball is in the court of the landowners. If those landowners want to form a fire district, they need to form, or they need to make a proposal to the city council. They don't need
to be
Ferrisburg's permission.
Really?
No, they can, that's my understanding. A fire district can be formed. It's like Ferrisburg Fire District didn't need to get permission from the select board, I don't think. I mean, they just formed.
Really?
You know, that's what I think. I don't know that it requires host town, approval.
Randy?
I happened to see over at, on the Obashan property that their sewer line ran out through the front, and there's a big new clean out right there on the corner, at the far corner. As you pull in looking at it, you look this way, and they've come right across the front with the sewer line.
It's not a sewer line. I think you're gonna find that's a storm drain.
Really?
Yeah, those are just catch basins and a storm drain. I'll double check that, but I saw them in there doing that, and I think their intent is to get the water away from, the groundwater away from the front of the store when it comes off and melts, so it has means to go out.
I stand corrected then.
So, yeah. Okay, any other committees or comments about committee reports? Hearing none, we're going to go to public comment. Hearing none, old business.
On the sewer, is it in the city charter specifically that sewer has to go to a public vote, or is that an interpretation that's a real estate, therefore?
The answer to the first part of your question is yes, but because it does not apply. There's actually a separate, it is in the real estate approval portion of the charter, but it is crystal clear that any agreement for sewer extended outside of the city of Vergennes requires voter approval. So it's not an opinion that sewer extension is treated like real estate. It's crystal clear in the charter.
Well, of course, there was, and obviously the charter couldn't have anticipated that there would be such a thing as a municipal sewer. So there was at some, well, the charter dates back to 1790.
No, but there was a charter change in 2004 or 5 or 6. There was a charter change.
Okay. And that specifically addresses it.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Okay, old business, none. New business, or Mel, city business.
I'm just gonna be real quick here on some items because we got some other items we need to deal with. You did see 3 tax sales in the newspaper over the last 3 weeks. Those were dealing with the delinquent sewers. I take, they're actually, yes, you did see 3 of those in the newspaper. There was a 4th, and the 4th did not have to appear in the newspaper. That was paid in part by the property owner and by the mortgage company. The other 3, there was originally no response from the owners, and so those went to the newspaper. All 3 got posted for the 3 weeks. The tax sale is scheduled for December 1. Today, right, Joan? Today we received a check from the mortgage company on one of the properties. So 2 of the 4 have been paid in full. The other 2, there has been no response from either the property owner or any of the mortgage holders. You know, obviously the tax sale is scheduled for December 1. You know, both properties are mortgaged. I do suspect that will be contacted. I have 5 other properties that were sent notices of tax sale. 3 of those properties I have already made an agreement with, and so 3 of the 5, those notices have not gone, they have not and will not go to the newspapers. And as long as the folks follow through with what they agreed to do for us, you know, those will be fine. Obviously, if they do not follow what they were agreed to, then we would initiate the process again. The other 2, there has been no response from either property owner nor from any of the mortgage holders. The property tax sales are scheduled for December 16th. I did them in 2 different groups. The other thing, I feel a little bit like deja vu. It was about a year ago when I explained to the council that our medical insurance for employees was going up some 18%, and I was going to have to do something because obviously I didn't budget any 18% increase. And I think it was Randy's motion that said, well, Mel, do whatever you need to do to keep us on budget. I think that was his motion, and that's what I did. And we ended up with a high deductible plan. We now have this choice care card. Some of you may have that feature where your your health reimbursement account is run out of a credit card. And we had it all set up. Joan did a ton of work. It's worked beautifully, and I thought, good, I won't have to deal with this again for a while. Well, not 1 year later, Cigna, our carrier is Cigna, and not 1 year later, we were notified, some of you may realize this, that Cigna will no longer provide group health insurance to employers that have less than 50 full-time covered employees, all right? So come December 31st, we're out of Cigna, and it leaves us with a couple of options. One being, there's a lot of options, but to be continue to be connected to the league's program, it's either Blue Cross Blue Shield or MVP. And of course, would they have a plan that's structured exactly the way the Cigna is? No. But I'm going to continue Randy's directive. Do whatever you can do to keep this on budget. And I know Joan's looking forward to re-enrolling all these people in a new program. It's just so much fun. But that's on her list of things to do. And it's worked out that the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan is just a little bit cheaper. There is similarities to the MVP, but I hate change, to be honest with you. But there's no option to us at this point. We need to leave Cigna. So I've had to spend a fair amount of time analyzing the various programs and whatever, and then Joan gets to do all of the enrollment. The other thing that I gave to you, and I gave to Andy, is the recent correspondence relative to the train station. It's still breathing, as you can see. We'll see if there is some. Indeed, they do get this thing out to bid before the holidays. That's what the claim is. So Mike says no. So anyway, it's not a
projection now is someplace about the bid somewhere around Christmas.
Okay. That holiday.
That holiday. Okay. But not sooner.
Right.
No, if not.
So that's all I have for items, Mike.
Thank you. Okay, let's jump right into the new business, Maynard Building Revolving Loan Fund now.
Yeah, I've given you a fair amount of information relative to the request by Sheer Cuts to, in essence, refinance their loan, which would enable them to not only pay the city, pay off its original loan, but also pay off their share of the streetscape project. And they do have some renovations that they want to do, which would increase employment there. They want to add an additional chair and sink, do some additional renovations in the back for a so-called nail room, pedicure room in there. I've looked at their profit and loss statements over the last few years. They have continued to supply their tax forms, whatever they're required to do in their current mortgage with the city. The committee met on October 27th, and I will tell you that there was a little confusion between me and Hillary and relative to one of their loans with Lake Sunapee. They have around the improvements that they have is around, they think around $14,000 or $15,000, and when we had originally talked, I did not realize that, and didn't realize that Sheer Cuts was going to not pay off the Lake Sunapee note, and in talking with their bookkeeper, we've come up with this alternative proposal. The proposal went out to the committee, and I offered the committee an opportunity to meet again to revisit this about the additional $9,500. There was one member on the committee that I think felt that the committee should meet, but couldn't meet this week. The rest of the committee members that responded felt that there was no need for them to have another meeting, even in light of the request. So the recommendation from me, I guess, is that the city approve the request by Sheer Cuts to increase their existing loan, which currently has a balance of $20,788, by an additional $50,000. And the payment plan would be at 4% with a 10-year amortization. That's a slightly different recommendation of the committee. The committee originally thought of a 20-year amortization with a 10-year balloon, but in my discussions with with both Hillary and their bookkeeper, when you notice what the amount of monthly payment obligation of the loans that are going to be paid off compared to what they would be paying us, that ends up being a positive cash flow for the business.
So if I understand this, is 40,500 plus the 20,788.27 they have together.
Plus an additional $9,500.
The $9,500.
So instead of 40,500, it would be 50,000
Even.
on top of the existing
20,788.
77.
I make said motion to approve this.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Open it for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. You got any more, Lois?
Yep, he's done.
Okay. All right, we're going to number C.
C, we currently have two delegates to the Addison County Regional Planning Commission. David is one of the delegates, and Alith Hescock is our other delegate. Alith just recently moved to his new house in Ferrisburg and sent me an email, which I shared with the mayor, that he really felt that it was, not appropriate for him. There's not a residency requirement for delegates. If some towns appoint non-residents that may be a full-time employee that they choose to represent the town. Alith just felt that it was not appropriate for him to continue to serve as our delegate, since he does live in Ferrisburg now. So we currently have a vacancy on that board. You may have read in the newspaper, I actually got a call from a resident, Margaret Lowe, I think it was, who represents the Audubon, I think she represents the Addison County Audubon Society, and she mentioned about the fact that a couple of weeks ago, when the Addison County Regional Planning Commission was trying to take a vote on some plan amendments, there was not enough people attending. There is a 60% rule in there, and they need to have, I think the number is 21. It's either 20 or 21 voting delegates that are present, and they were not able to meet that threshold, and therefore couldn't hold that vote. So anyway, I just wanted to let the board know that we have a vacancy in that position, and as you know, Mike, my wife has an agreement with you that I'm not allowed to raise my hand.
That's right.
Okay.
And I back her for
Okay.
that. Yep. I signed in blood.
All right.
Okay,
So
so
anyway,
we
I
are
just-
looking
so
for someone to,
We're recruiting.
we're recruiting for that position. All right, item D, police station site.
Yeah, I apologize that I didn't get this in your original packets. But in short, Chief Merkel and I did do a little tour of the city, coming up with alternative sites. All that I would, Andy, I'll get you a copy of this memo here. I'll email it to you in the morning. And what I would suggest, Mike, is that either members of the city council go out and look at these sites, tour them on their own, or, if you want to, unfortunately, it gets dark early, so unless we're breaking away in the middle of the day, a site visit before a city council meeting would require flashlights. So, I would, hope that between now and the next meeting, if everyone would, just go out and take a look at these alternatives, and if there's other alternatives, I'm really all ears, but, again, George and I worked on the kind of the short list of criteria, and again, if there's anything out there that's missing, really, bring it to the table. I think, Joe's not here, but Joe felt that it was important that instead of just moving forward with the New Haven Road site as being the option, felt that that the city council ought to look at other alternatives and before taking any further steps.
I have a question.
Go for it.
If I get this right, Panton Road, McDonough Drive, Northern Gateway, Farmer Lane, and Green Street.
Yep.
These are all sites, but we don't, so we would have to purchase any of these properties, the land.
That's correct.
We're off
Except
New
for
Haven.
Well,
No, that's right, we're off New
Right.
Haven Road, we own the land.
The McDonough Drive sites, I can't speak for the state of Vermont, but it's very possible that, either one of those buildings might be acquired without having to pay money.
Okay, but then
That's a
we would have to be
possibility.
responsible for renovating it.
Absolutely.
And updating it.
Yep, but no,
And those are the stone buildings up
right,
there?
the only other one,
Fairbanks, which is the first one on the left.
Which is
And
stone?
then, no, which is brick.
Okay, the
First
brick.
one on the left is the brick one, it's Fairbanks. Second one is the Arsenal, which is a stone building.
Okay.
the Stone Crusher property, which is owned by the Vergennes Pan Water District, I haven't ranked any of these sites, or used any criteria or anything. I've just put these out here, and but obviously when we sold the 11 acres when we conveyed the 11-acre parcel, the so-called Stone Crusher parcel, to the Vergennes Pan Water District, there was no money that exchanged hands. And but the deed was written in such a way that the water district could only use it for furnishing water. And if there came a day that that property was no longer used for that purpose, it would revert to the city of Vergennes. So relative to that lower section over there, obviously it would require some negotiation because the city did deed it to them. It's
Well, I don't think you were mayor then, when Rennie, we discussed this, and at one time, the water district was thinking would like to put their offices up by the crusher.
Yep.
And then that building there could possibly have been, could be the police station down there.
I wasn't mayor, I was county
No.
council though.
Right. And I was too, and then, because they had mentioned it, that they would like to put the building up there, then I thought, well, that was off the beaten path.
Yep.
And the only comments people had concern, well, it was because it was across the river, but that's still, I mean, that whole spot down there would have been the
I
garage.
will tell you, Zig, that there's two other sites that are not on this list, and I don't mind telling you what they are. One of them is that site.
Okay.
But to me, if the Vergennes Panton Water District has interest in moving, we would feel differently about that. But
Well, that's why it was brought up, because they talked about it.
okay, so I wasn't aware of that. So
Yep.
I suppose that if the water district, they only lease that property. They have
Right.
they have a 100-year lease on that parcel for their office. So if it was that spot, it might be large enough. I'm not sure, but I think that it's reasonable to put that on the list. The other site that we look at is obviously the Armory, and there may have been a time when they were closing down armories, and I just don't see that happening any longer. So I didn't. It wasn't just that I didn't have any more room on that page, but I just didn't see that as really being any possibility.
But that's why I brought it up, because it was mentioned they were thinking about possibly moving
Yep.
their office, so that's.
I think that I don't think that any alternative should be ruled out at this time, and so that could certainly be added to the list.
December's meeting is,
We only have one meeting in December. It's the 20th, right, Joan?
Yeah.
You corrected me on that the other day, so.
any other questions of Mel about the police station's alternate sites? If not, I prepared a little bit of something. I handed out to each of you in front of you a Vergennes holiday stroll, and it's double-sided. So it's a day full of fun and activity. So hopefully you get the word out and come enjoy the fun. Go have breakfast with Santa Claus. That's always a good breakfast, and it supports a good cause, the U.S. The high school. So friends of music. So want to thank over 50 volunteers. I know I mentioned this last meeting, but I want to do it so it goes out on the TV. Thank over 50 volunteers, which adds up to over 900 hours of help with the Haunted Forest. We had 845 participants compared to roughly 480 last year. I want to thank Win Grant for his building. That was an ideal setting. I want to thank Tom Denneker for the use of his parking lot. And I want to thank Northland Job Corps and Donald Hall for helping assisting with parking on that day. On another note, we invited a couple of our office people, our clerk and our assistant, to help judge in the pumpkins in the park, and I think they had a lot of fun. We had 53 entries, I believe it was, compared to about the same number of last year. Might have been a few more. We also got an email from the National Weather Bureau in Burlington, and they are looking for a volunteer to take daily weather observations for them. Look on our excuse me, our city websites for more detail. So, yep. And I've talked to you about the holiday stroll, so I believe that's it. Sure. Yeah.
I think that I would personally be remiss when you started talking about the haunted warehouse if I didn't say that you deserve an absolutely incredible amount of pats on the back for this, because this would not have happened without Mayor Daniels working on it. There were a lot of people who worked on it, but the spark plug was Mike, and that was very obvious. And the success of this is just a lot of that just is right in his lap. So.
Well, thank you very much. There was some people that were there with, one family, just to mention husband and wife, that just they get into this Halloween stuff, and there was not a scene that didn't have one of their pieces in that scene. I mean, they just dug out the boxes and say, what do you want? So we just, hey, I want this, I want that. So, but it did go good. It went very well, and there's some, not to let the cat out of the bag, but there's some really serious talk about next year's. There was some concerns about a few things that happened this year, and Mel and I are working that angle to get transparency, we'll call it. So, all right, thank you. Lowell.
I will make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Randy made the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?